If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members. Unlimited defense budgets, unmatched legal expertise. Carry the same level of support police officers have. Carry CCW Safe, the highest caliber.
Okay, can you guys hear me now? And I'll tell you why that just happened. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me now in the chat. Can you guys hear me? I got Laura Hyman telling me yes. Doherty's telling me yes. Okay. About 5 minutes before the stream started, the power went out at my house, and I forgot to restart my mixer. So that was on me. So let's start over again. My apologies. I'll have to trim that out of the stream after we get done. So anyways, welcome to Survival Dispatch. I am your host tonight, John Wheaton. Apologies for the technical difficulties. But I just wanted to give you guys a quick overview what we're going to be doing tonight. Tonight, we're going to be diving into the Supreme Court's recent refusal to take up the Bruin challenge from the that went into the state of New York after New York went after concealed carry gun-free zones. So we will dive into that shortly. Before we get started on that, head over to Survival Dispatch on Patreon/Survival Dispatch if you guys want to become a member of the Insiders. This is a huge thing. You get a lot of content. It's $9.99 a month, or you can pay $95 and get it for the entire year, which saves you really just about 2 months worth of the cost. And that's how we can bring this stuff to you guys. You also get access to our Signal stream, our Signal chat, and that is, let me tell you, going crazy because I took the weekend off to go to a long range class. I'll talk about that in a minute. And when I got back on, it was like thousands of messages that I had to read. Obviously, I didn't read I just kind of read the most recent ones, but I didn't actually go through all the thousands that were on there. But that just kind of gives you guys an idea of how active that chat is, and you meet people. Really awesome, like-minded people that are in this community. And you also get access to our survival guide, 228 pages, and you get discounts on our Survival Dispatch magazine, which is amazing, and a lot of work and effort went into that and a lot of dollars. Then you also get access to our Insiders Only streams, which currently is happening once a week with Chris, and it's incredible. So really would appreciate you guys going and showing your support. If you like what we do and you want to see more of it, go over to Survival Dispatch on Patreon, patreon.com/Survival Dispatch, and sign up today. We've got a big show. Real quick, you guys probably noticed I wasn't here last night to host as I normally am on Sunday night. I switched with Chris. I switched last night for tonight because I went to a long range class. I'm going to do a quick, because it does really tie into all of this and the freedoms that we have and how they're defended. So I went to a long range class. Quick shout out to my buddy Adrian from Sidewinder Concepts. They do a lot of classes in Texas. They do a lot of classes all over the place, including some places in Florida. They do them in Missouri, which is my neck of the woods, and went over there. I took a long range class from his company in October and was able to push my rifle out to 1,000 yards within basically a few minutes of being on the range after doing the classroom portion of his long range class. It's amazing. He's an Army sniper, trained with special forces and a lot of other things. He's a wealth of knowledge and teaches in such a way that even regular people can understand. An amazing guy. But I went to a scoped carbine class of his, and I was able to take my stock Daniel Defense AR-15 out to 700 yards and consistently hit man-sized targets at 700 yards. A lot of people don't believe that that is a capability. I can tell you after that, I am blown away at the capability of the AR-15 platform at range and being able to be a precision shooter at those distances, learning the concept and the tactics. And I said all of that to say this. The Second Amendment is a huge thing. It is literally the reason that we haven't already fallen to tyranny. And that is really what our headline is about, because some news broke today. I'm going to give a little bit of background. So the Supreme Court has drops this Bruin decision. It's a landmark ruling affirming that the Second Amendment is not a second-class right. And then 2 years later, as of today, when New York turns around and spits in the face of the ruling, it creates a so-called sensitive zone that practically covers half of the state. The court shrugs and says, yeah, we're going to sit this one out. They refused to hear the case. And this is not just cowardice, it's betrayal. Now, let's be real. The New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin wasn't just a minor clarification. It was a line in the sand. It told the anti-gun politicians across the country that you can't infringe upon the right to bear arms based on arbitrary bureaucratic discretion. It told states like New York that the Constitution doesn't bend just because you don't like it. It's a very, very important thing. And what did New York do? They had the legislative temper tantrum, and they rewrote the rules on almost every public place gun-free zone. Parks, churches, Times Square, even private businesses, unless you post a sign saying otherwise. It presumed you were banning unless you told otherwise. So kind of the opposite of how gun-free zones typically work in states like mine in Illinois. We don't have the best concealed carry law, but we don't have one as crazy as what they were trying to put in. And now SCOTUS is had a chance to reaffirm their ruling to say, hey, we meant what we said in Bruin, but they didn't. That's the problem. Because what does this do in the long term? And we'll get to this in a minute, but I'm going to lay some groundwork before we get to some of the posts and news articles about this. What it essentially does is it tells anti-gun states, go ahead, push the limits, redefine the meaning of public safety. Got the Second Amendment, as long as you do it with enough legal camouflage. It's fine. It's not a big deal. And we're running into this because the reality is a lot of people are saying, well, they're just pushing it down for the lower courts to try and do, or to make the lower courts define under the new ruling of Bruin, under the new precedent of Bruin. The problem is they're not doing that. They are not doing it at all. So everything's going to end up at the Supreme Court. And if they keep playing this political ping pong match of kicking it back down to the lower courts, we're going to be sitting for years where we could be jailed for our gun rights. We could be jailed for all of this. And this is not just a singular issue. The court system, as we have seen in the first few months of Trump's presidency, is way out of bounds on a lot of things. And the things that they should be very matter of fact about, it's kind of flipped upside down. Everything that they should be matter of fact about, they're kind of saying, well, it's not a big deal, or, they don't move with any kind of expediency. Yet, when Trump does exactly what he is supposed to do as president, and he protects our country and he protects our borders, what happens? Well, some lower district court judge thinks that he is God or king of the United States and tells the president, hey, you can't do that. Nowhere in the Constitution does it mention district level courts. That's because they didn't exist. The only thing that is actually mentioned in the Constitution is the SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States. They are a co-equal branch. A district court judge out of the lower district of Illinois cannot tell the president of the United States he cannot be the president. So we have a court that is completely twisted around in what its actual purview is and what it should actually be ruling on. And they're turning this upside down because now they're trying to tell Trump that he can't deport people, or trying to get people to bring people back that are MS-13 people just because they had a green card. Luckily, there's some other things. There's not all negatives out of the Supreme Court, but the problem that I see, and it's a precedential problem, is that we're not getting the rulings on cases that they've already set precedent on. And they need to send more messages by kicking. How do you send a message? So I'm getting off on a tangent a little bit, but how do you send a message to your children when they're out of line? Do you discipline them? And once you've disciplined them for something, then they do it again. Do you just say, well, think about what you did? Or do you swiftly correct them in whatever manner is appropriate for the infraction? And you do that quicker because they need to know, they need to have a message sent. Hey, I am not messing around. And the courts are allowing the lower courts and the state levels, legislatures that are completely against our rights. And I'm spending a lot of time on this because the Second Amendment is so important. So they are pushing the boundaries and ignoring what the Supreme Court has said. And the Supreme Court, like a parent that's not even engaged with their children, just sits and let their kids, paint the walls and set the house on fire. And they're just sitting by, well, we'll rule on it when you actually get it right, what we told you before. No, they need to move swifter when it comes to redefining that. And you know what that message actually sends to the lower courts? You better start ruling this way because we're just going to keep smacking you down. When you actually see a brick wall, you hit the brakes on the car. Anyways, let's get into the news. I spent a lot of time on that to kind of set this up because I think it is the most important battle that outside of the gun community, no one's really paying attention to. Because if this falls and this is allowed to stand, then we're in a really, really bad pickle. So let me get my my share screen up, and we'll start out with Gun Owners of America. Supreme Court denies certiorari on our lawsuit, and the Gun Owners of America and a couple of other organizations that we need to heavily support. I have a lot of friends that work for GOA. It's everything that the NRA was supposed to be and is not. And they're a no compromise organization, unlike the NRA. Antonyuk versus V. James, or the interlocutory appeal. We are challenging New York's unconstitutional good moral character requirement to carry a firearm, which passed to restrict gun rights in the NYSRPA v. Bruin. So here is the screenshot of the certiorari denied, and that is them allowing them to argue this. Certiorari is basically, we see the case, we're going to allow oral arguments in the court and hear them. And this is all procedural stuff that has to happen before they actually hear a case in the Supreme Court. This is a very, very big deal. From Mario Knopfel, Supreme Court lets New York gun restrictions stand and won't hear the challenge. The U.S. Supreme Court has declined to take up the challenge of the New York post-2022 gun law, allowing restrictions on carrying firearms in sensitive locations like schools, bars, Times Square, and to remain in place. The law passed after the court's landmark ruling expanding gun rights includes strict licensing standards and bans on high traffic public spaces. Gun right advocates want the court to narrow its historical test for such laws, but justices passed signaling a new boundary for the Second Amendment battles. Oh, that's the wrong one. Okay. I put this in the sit rep, and side note for you guys, one of the other things that's included in the insiders I forgot to actually mention earlier is that you get our daily sit rep. And so I put these videos. Sometimes we don't watch the videos. They're worth watching. I watched this earlier. Tom Grieve, if you guys don't follow him on X, follow him. Along with Washington Gun Law and Four Boxes Diner, 3 absolutely amazing lawyers that understand the Second Amendment. And Tom does a very, very good job. And I've met Tom personally, an amazing dude, really, really down to earth. But he also speaks on ramifications, what it could actually open up. And he does a really great job in this. I think it's about a 10 or 15 minute video of telling you guys what the long-term ramifications of the Supreme Court doing this actually means. Washington Gun Law, one of my buddies, Will Kirk, I know him. We've actually had him on our podcast. This is the key. So there were 5 gun cases in front of the Supreme Court. Snope v. Brown, the Ocean State Tactical case, which is Snope v. Brown is a actual assault weapon ban case out of the state of Maryland. Ocean State Tactical is a magazine capacity ban that they're still on the list for possibly being taken up, but they've just been kicking them down the road constantly. And currently they wouldn't even be heard until 2026. But they also denied even being able to hear the cases for the concealed carry. And Will's comment here, not good, is absolutely true. This is not a good sign that this Supreme Court is actually going to do anything on gun rights anytime soon. These should be expedient cases. They should be moved in front because of 3 years ago, the ruling that they gave. And let's broaden this out. So here's a couple of other things that are going on with the Supreme Court. So this is something with Project Veritas, and you guys know we've posted a lot of things about Project Veritas. We've shared a lot of things in our streams on Project Veritas. So this is more stuff that's going on. So this is, when does a hidden camera cross the line of journalism to a crime? Project Veritas is asking the Supreme Court to decide. Here's why it matters. This is a very, very important case because it's the left is trying to ban underground recording. Well, no surprise why, because when these guys get at a bar with either an attractive female or somebody that they get a little loose-lipped with, they spill all the beans. We saw this all the way back in 2020 with, the V-word injuries and all of the stuff that was going on, and these guys out here spilling the beans on what was really going on with the testing and how, masking actually didn't work, spilling the beans openly to these people. And, of course they don't want that stuff out for people to see. One really big ray of sunshine was that, the MS-13, the member of MS-13 from El Salvador, they stayed that, so he will actually remain in El Salvador pending a review. So that's a very good thing. They're not going to try and force the president to bring back a gang member who had a green card. In other news on the Second Amendment, where there was one ruling by the Supreme Court, and it was on the ghost guns law. And this was not good for the gun owners, because since the founding of this country, it has been common practice for people to build their own guns. And the difference is you can get an 80% lower block of aluminum for an AR-15. You can mill it out if you have the tools, and you can make your own gun. All of the other parts in the AR-15 you can have shipped to your house. The actual firearm is the lower receiver. And this is bad because the Supreme Court ruled that that you actually have to serialize, and this is a broken thing. So why is this happening in the Supreme Court? And we'll get to lower courts in a minute, but we are having an issue with the Supreme Court, and Publius actually lays out what is actually going on in the Supreme Court. Resign Roberts, that's Chief Justice Roberts, Chief Justice John Roberts, relationship with anti-Trump operative Norm Eisen is pure judicious bias. Roberts spent a week in Eisen's 150-room Prague palace, where they worked on American and European rule of law issues while Roberts had been Chief Justice. This collaboration is suspicious, even Eisen's history as a key architect of anti-Trump lawfare. Eisen, U.S. ambassador to the Czech Republic, 2011 to 2014, led Trump's first impeachment in 2019 as special counsel, drafting 10 articles of impeachment a month before the Ukraine inquiry even began. So for those of you that aren't aware, that is the phone call that with Zelensky that they tried to impeach him over, because he was trying to find out what was going on with the energy company that Hunter Biden was on the board of, and why all of this money was flowing through that company, all the corruption. So he was getting too close to the hidden reality of what's going on with the Democratic Party. He co-founded the state's Unity Democracy Center, which sued to block Trump's 2024 run in Colorado. If you guys remember, they tried to take him off the ballot in Colorado. Illinois was also considering a similar thing, and then they saw how Colorado went, and it ended up being very, very bad. citing the 14th Amendment over January 6th, and filed ethics complaints against Trump's allies, John Eastman and Jenna Ellis. That was his lawyers. Jenna was one of his lawyers. For their 2020 election challenges. Eisen has chaired CREW 2016 to 2019, leading emoluments lawsuits against Trump and advocating censorship strategies to silence him. Suspiciously, Roberts' Prague trip aligns with Eisen's outgoing legal attacks on Trump, raising questions about America and European rule of law work they did, especially since Eisen bragged to their close friendship on a podcast. This is 2 of 2 for this post. Roberts has a history of other poor decisions. He upheld the Affordable Care Act in 2012. You guys remember that. He actually rewrote the law so that it would be not a tax, that it would not fit into the criteria, which would make it illegal. He classified it as a tax. Sorry, I had that backwards. Under the tax, under Congress's taxing power, because originally they said it wasn't, rather than under the Commerce Clause. A move widely criticized as a legal stretch, and in 2020, SCOTUS under Roberts refused to hear the election fraud cases, which some linked to his ties to American and European rule of law projects with Eisen. Reports also suggest Roberts met with intelligence officials in 2019 to discuss disinformation and hack and leak ops. Meetings tied to Aspen Institute, where Eisen ran a hack and leak exercise. This pattern suggests that Roberts may have been influenced by Eisen's anti-Trump agenda, compromising his impartiality. Roberts must recuse himself from Eisen-related cases and resign to restore trust in SCOTUS. Here is the issue. A major issue, because we cannot sit back and allow this to continue. We have to stand up to all of these judges that are trying to wield political power when they're supposed to be impartial. They're supposed to be just read the Constitution, make sure that laws actually don't violate it, which all gun laws do. All modern gun laws violate the Second Amendment. Spoiler alert. But it's not just that. It broadens out. And I believe that Roberts has shown in a lot of ways that he is not an ally to the right. He is not an ally to us or the Constitution, because the reality is the vast majority of people on the right want the Constitution upheld. They want it to be, defined as it was when it was written, and we're more originalist. You can get into some people in the Republican Party that don't actually agree necessarily with originalism, but the reality is most of us want that. We want it to be what the founders actually meant for the country, because the country was best when we had the Constitution defined as it was written. So what do? We have to speak out. We have to use our public influence to actually speak against what is going on in our country. And we need to try and apply as much political pressure to our representatives and everyone else that has the power to actually call this into question. Now, the reality is Roberts he views himself as the arbiter of peace between both sides. So typically what you see is when a Republican is in power, he will lean more left in his decision and the kinds of cases that he takes up. Whereas if a Democrat is in power, you will see him lean back to the right. But that's not what we want. We want it to be a definition of the constitutional reality, a definition of the Constitution as written. And this is a huge, huge thing, because we don't want a country that can be governed by a judge in a district court or at the Supreme Court just because he has a political animus for the opposite side or whoever the president is. And Roberts does not like him, and I does not like Trump. And I think that his movements to kind of block Trump on a lot of these things. Now, there's stuff that he's ruled on that's been fine, but he also, any chance that he has to counter him or to use some political power to gum up the works, for lack of a better term, he will do it. And that's really what we have for the kind of headline part of this, because it's something that's very, very important, and it's something very near and dear to my heart as a Second Amendment advocate. And I believe that the right to protect yourself against tyrannical governments is the thing that actually protects us from falling into tyranny, because we would already be in this. I mean, guys, 2020 was 5 years ago. Literally 5 years ago last month that it all started, and we saw how fragile things are when political power is when the political power of fear is wielded. So we are going to move into the rest of the news now, into the main part of our chapter 1, which is really talking about more of what's going on in the country and how it should be, how it is. Well, what's going on in the news? I apologize. Had a really busy day after having a really, really tiring weekend. Okay, so let's move into the rest of our chapter 1, and I'm going to start off now. This is an 18-minute video. I'm not going to play the whole thing. If you guys have the sit rep, if you're an insider, make sure and sign up, and you get this. But this man, and I don't actually know his name, but he does an amazing job. This is well worth a watch. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but what he points out about what's actually going on with tariffs is huge. So let's watch just a couple minutes of this.
Why is it important to do this, to institute tariffs, to rethink trade?
I think you have to start with the proposition, has the system failed? And to me, it's an emphatic yes. I think of it in sort of two ways. One, if you think of the way trade is supposed to work, you're supposed to export in order to import that, and then you get the benefit of trade. You get actually, you do what you do best, I do what I do best, or I do what you do less best.
Right.
You export, we import, and we get the benefit. We both have higher standards of living. That's not really it's evolved to. It's evolved to now where you have a few countries, the United States being the biggest, that have an open capital system and an open trading system, and other countries have an industrial policy that is designed not to increase the standard of living of their citizens, but to gain wealth. So what they're trying to do is get wealth in order to get assets in the United States, in order to get technology, in order to get all these kind of things that make you wealthy. So I think of the kind of failure points as being, one, because this system doesn't work, we have this giant transfer of wealth from the United States overseas, and that is in the form of trade deficits. And the way the system is supposed to work, no one should have large trade deficits for long periods of time. Things can happen. You can do it. You could have trade deficits with one country, surplus with another. But the notion of a country having hundreds of billions of dollars of trade deficits every year is not how it's supposed to work. We now are to the point where our trade deficits, they calculate them at about $700 or $800 billion. If you did it the way you or I would do in a sensible way, you'd probably be at $1 trillion or $1.25 trillion. So that's a transfer of wealth from Americans overseas in return for current consumption. And it has nothing to do with economics. It's entirely the result of industrial policy of other people and our being defenseless. Donald Trump's essence is he says we're getting ripped off. Our workers are getting screwed. It's not because they're lazy or stupid. It's because we have a bad system that is hurting them, and it's destabilizing the country. And all of these are data points that kind of make that point. And once you realize that, you realize you have to do something. right? The purpose of the economy, first of all, obviously is national security. But after that, it's to distribute resources and wealth so the most Americans live the best lives they can live. And we have lost that. We have just plain lost it.
I'm going to comment on this. And what he's actually talking about is like the system that we currently have of free trade, it's not really free. And Trump realizes that. This is why he is moving to do this. And yes, it's going to make the markets a little bit volatile. It even could cause some drops or crashes. The reality is because this has been a system that is for people just building wealth. It's not actually for the propping up of the economy or building the economy. It's actually about personalized people and what they want to do to enrich themselves. Notice the people that are squawking are not the people that work in the steel mills, that work in the factories. It's the people that build their wealth through the stock market. Because, a lot of people are like, well, retirement funds. As in 2020, the people that affects the most are really the only people that affects are the people that are retiring this year. Somebody like myself who has probably 20 more years of working to get to my retirement age, maybe 25. I hope not. But the reality is these market corrections or changes in the long run, when you're talking about investments, are as long as the market comes back, and it will over time, it won't really have much of an effect long term, because when you talk about investment strategies for retirement, that's a long game. You're going to have crashes. We've had multiple crashes in the last decade. I mean, look at 2020. It came back. So we're seeing a lot of this stuff and a lot of misinformation in the media. The people that are on Trump's side in this, and some polls have his approval ratings going up today after the tariff stuff. And it's getting results. That's the reality of it, because Netanyahu actually visited the Oval Office today and has basically said, we're totally going to eliminate the trade deficit with the United States and have 0 to 0.
First, if I can mention tariffs, it's a subject of some interest today. I can tell you that I said to the president a very simple thing. We will eliminate the trade deficit with the United States. We intend to do it very quickly. We think it's the right thing to do. And we're going to also eliminate trade barriers, a variety of trade barriers that have been put up unnecessarily. And I think Israel can serve as a model for many countries who ought to do the same. I recognize the position of the United States. It says, we're allowing other countries to put tariffs on us, but we don't put tariffs on them. And, I'm a free trade champion, and free trade has to be fair trade. And I think that's basically the position that you have put forward, Mr. President. We are going to eliminate the tariffs, and rapidly. I had the opportunity to speak to Secretary Lutnick yesterday. We talked about how we could affect this quickly, and I hope to bring the solution very quickly. We're not talking about intentions. We're not talking about, just words. We're talking about results, and those results are going to come back.
Okay, so we're already seeing movement on the foreign, with other countries. So this is very interesting because I generally like, and I know there's been feuds. I generally like Ben Shapiro. I still listen to Ben Shapiro. I know there's varying opinions on Ben Shapiro. I think he's overall positive for the right. He's very smart, but he does have a soft spot, and he does get some things wrong. Anytime you are even thinking about mentioning, hey, Israel literally exists. It literally stays in existence because of the United States. It only came to be a country in 1948 because of the alliance with the United States. And I'm not going to get into the whole Mossad stuff and all of the stuff that you see online about anti-Israel stuff. But the reality is why in the heck, if you actually are in existence because the United States and Israel realizes this, why are you tariffing products coming into the United States or into Israel from the United States at astronomical percentages, like 99% and stuff like that. And so this was Steven Crowder. Him and Shapiro they have somewhat of a checkered history, but this is a very good 20-second video talking about Shapiro's full-blown meltdown. And Shapiro's been a very pro-Trump guy, but when it came to trade, and I think I honestly know why, is because Shapiro has a lot of money tied up in the stock market. And you'll see this on the right, a lot of people like demonizing tariffs when prior to the 16th and 17th Amendment, that was actually how the government made money historically. It's how they funded everything, along with some input from the states, but the states had control over that. Here we go, 20-second video.
We also couldn't just make an exception for Israel as far as this equation regarding our trade deficit, right, which is how we determined the actual tariffs. What kind of world do you think we would live in if Donald Trump said, okay, we'll apply to except for Israel? I mean, for crying out loud, Candace Owens would grow a wiener just so she could have an erection. We also...
Last comment. I always leave it to Steven Crowder to say something hilarious. So let's look at what's going on as well. Not just Israel, but Scott Bessent actually said that up to 70 different countries in the nation are coming to the table. Let's watch this.
Larry, I can tell you that there are 50, 60, maybe almost 70 countries now who have approached us. So it's going to be a busy April, May, maybe into June. And Japan is a very important military ally. They're a very important economic ally. And the U.S. has a lot of history with them. So I would expect that Japan's going to get priority just because they came forward very quickly. But it's going to be very busy. And if President Trump, again, gave himself maximum negotiating leverage, and just when he achieved the maximum leverage, he's willing to start talking. Larry, I can tell you that there are...
So the leverage that is being put out seems to be having an effect on all of these countries. And so generally, I believe that this is going to be a short-term thing, but Trump is holding his cards close to his chest, as you do with any good poker player, and you're not actually revealing your strategy. What they're talking about right now is, yeah, these are going to go on until we get the results we want. And that's what strong willed people do. So, but how are the everyday people actually supporting Trump in this? Let's watch this. This is Jack Posobiec, boy. Pennsylvania steelworkers on why they're supporting President Trump. Historically, we've all been Democrats. When President Trump stepped in and imposed those tariffs on the Chinese, I firmly believe that he will save the steel industry. Let's watch this.
They accepted it, the endorsement, and I just wanted people to know that the steelworkers for Trump, I want people to know that all the steelworkers in the Mon Valley are for President Trump.
So, Glenn, I'm curious, typically union workers in your industry, we know them to endorse Democrats. Why Donald Trump this go around?
Well, historically, we've all been Democrats. A couple of us up here are third-generation steelworkers. And we had a trade case years ago that our ex-international president, Tom Conway, was fighting against the Chinese for illegal dumping. And when President Trump stepped in and he imposed those tariffs on the Chinese, I firmly believe that he saved the steel industry, not only in our country, but the Mon Valley, where many of us have lived for close to 30 years.
Andy, how about you? Why are you supporting Trump?
Well, number one is to protect the jobs in our valley. I'm a third generation steel worker. I've been through those layoffs. It's not fun. I've seen 3 mills shut down in the valley in the 80s. We have 3 mills left in the valley. I don't want to see those shut down. And he made a firm commitment when I asked him with a handshake, Mr. President, after the election, will you do what you can to keep our Mon Valley viable in the steel industry? He gripped my hand and confirmed to me through that handshake that he says, I will do that.
So the everyday man understands what's going on. But let's look at what how we reveal the people that are so anti this and what's really going on. This is older millennial, great follow on all social medias. He's a very deep thinking dude and has a great delivery. Let's watch this, a minute 35.
So the New York Times decided to release a little op-ed talking shit on the tariffs, saying your life will never be the same after these tariffs. Now, the funny thing to me is that the author of this op-ed is a man named Justin Wolf. And in this op-ed, he talks about how the $4,000 increase on the cost of vehicles is probably why his family's going to have to stick to one vehicle, and how he's going to have to, adjust his grocery shopping because he's just not able to afford the more expensive things anymore. The problem with that is that Justin Wolf, in just his salary, makes $590,000 a year. That's just his salary. He's also an author who makes somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000 to $700,000 a year for writing and showing up at speaking engagements. He also makes more than $300,000 a year attending podcasts and conferences. And he's married to a woman who makes $500,000 a year. In total, his family household makes more than $2 million annually. So I don't think a $4,000 increase on the price of vehicles is going to change his life very much. I don't think an adjustment in grocery prices is going to make him struggle to put food on the table. And look, will he be negatively affected? Maybe. But will it change his standard of living? Absolutely fucking not. Like, people, please remember that anytime you see an op-ed like this, anytime you see an article criticizing these things and talking about how horrible life's going to be, take 30 seconds and look up the fucking author. And if they're making more than $2 million a year, maybe don't listen to their struggle.
That's a very good point, because a lot of these people that are so anti-tariff and so anti, protecting our industries in the United States, they have a lot of skin in the game in the foreign markets. They're making a lot of money out of the foreign markets. And, so, yeah, they're pissed off because they stand to lose 5% of their $2 million income. But let's also look at the history of the Democratic Party on tariffs. This is really interesting. And this is a video from, 2005. And you might recognize the guy in this video. It's Chuck Schumer. We won't play all of this, but there's been some things that have changed on the outlook on tariffs. Could it be that maybe Chuck has some skin in the game in the foreign markets? Let's watch.
It says to the Chinese, enough already. It says to the Chinese that their unfair trade policies have got to end. It says to the Chinese, this is a shot across your bow. Reform, because if you don't, there are going to be dramatic consequences throughout the world, in our country, and in your country as well. The bottom line is very simple, Mr. President. The Chinese have enjoyed a huge trade surplus with the United States, as this chart shows. Every year, it gets larger and larger and larger. Admittedly, some of that trade surplus is due to the rules of free trade. But much of that trade surplus is because the Chinese don't play fair. They don't let our goods into their country. I can tell you company after company in New York who cannot sell goods in China or can only sell the goods under certain conditions that make it impossible for them to sell them. The Chinese make no effort to prevent the ripping off of our intellectual property. These are our crown jewels, the thinking, the great creativity, the great entrepreneurialness of the American business community is just taken, and they shrug their shoulders. And worst of all, the Chinese, despite the fact that they have tremendous advantages by the rules of free trade, pile on and add unfair rules that violate free trade. And at the top of that list is the fact that the Chinese peg their currency abnormally low so that their exports get a 27% advantage here in the United States. Our imports get a 27% disadvantage when sold in China. Every tenet of free trade, if you believe in it, says they should not peg their currency. And Senator Graham and I have forborne. We were asked by the administration last year, let us negotiate. I agree, negotiating would be better. But nothing happened. The Chinese give lip service and don't change their trade policies a jot. What does this mean for America?
I'm going to stop it there. It's a 5-minute video. Once again, join the Patreon. You can watch that and see all of these links on that. But the reality is understanding how tariffs work and how China. Here's the thing: free trade has to be negotiated on good faith with both parties. Should we have good faith with China? Should we actually be okay with doing business with them when we know their ultimate goal is to destroy our country? So, as Chuck Schumer said, they get our stuff. They steal our intellectual properties and then they create it and they make it cheaper, which means that people are going to buy more of it. And when you're talking about buying things made in China, the money that you spend on those things goes to China. There are percentages that stay here in the United States. If you buy something that is completely made in the United States, where does the money stay? Well, it goes to the company in the United States. So it stays in the United States. He's talking about trade deficits in this video. You know, the very thing that Trump is railing about. And he's actually pointing out all of the points that Donald Trump is doing this tariff or trade war on. So why the change? Is it just opposing Trump, or is it that they're getting money, much like we know that Joe Biden was, from China? Look back at the early 90s. Bill Clinton is the one that started this snowball by giving China most favored nation, which gave them a lot of trade capital so that they could build up their country. They're making most of this stuff with slave labor. That's why they can make it so much cheaper. They also devalue their own currency, as Chuck Schumer just said, so that there is an imbalance. And if you do 27 to the negative and 27 to the positive in trade, that's 54%, guys. Simple math. That's the shift. There's a 54% gap in if the stuff that we send over there to sell and the stuff they send us to sell. That's broken in anybody's mind. And that's what he's trying to set straight. It's amazing to go up and dig up these old videos of them arguing for this. So here's a quick meme, and normally we save these for here you go. So this is Canada. You know, Canada trying to shake their sabers at us. Fine, I won't buy your products. LOL. Okay, but can you afford us not to buy yours? That's the reality, especially with places like Canada. This is their imports and exports. They get so much money from the stuff that they import of ours. And their economy, their GDP is based heavily on this, to where the point where it has a very, very fast effect on their economy. And Mexico's even worse. I haven't looked into the numbers on China, but China is the most dishonest country in the world as far as when it comes to trade and things like that. This is really, well, Terry Morris, the duplicity of these politicians. The reality is back in 2005, it was probably a lot more politically expedient for the Democrats to talk about this stuff, because the Democratic Party hadn't gone to this crazy far left, anti-Trump, anti-MAGA, one world government loving party at that time. It was shifting left, but you go back that far and it's amazing how far they've come in 20 years. So that's really the important thing that people need to understand. I'll give an analogy that I actually saw the other day. You have two lighters, and this is just kind of driving this home. You have two lighters. One's made in China, one's made in the United States, 100%. The Chinese one is $19, right? The American one is $24. But when you spend the $19 on the Chinese one because it's cheaper, and maybe there's nothing that looks different about it because it was made by stealing the American idea, and then they made it for cheaper, and they imported it, and it's cheaper. And people buy off of price a lot of times, especially for low-level items. But what's behind that is of the $19, $5 stays in America and $15 goes back to China. But if you buy the American one, $24 gets paid and it stays in America. It stays in our economy. It builds our economy. It circulates inside of our economy. However, the way tariffs work is we say, okay, we're going to put an import tax on this, a tariff that's going to put the price of this Chinese lighter at $32. Well, so if people buy the Chinese one, they're paying more, but more money staying in the United States because we're taking that money. However, what typically happens is people are going to be like, oh, well, I'll just buy this one, the American made one, for $24 because it's $8 cheaper. And all of that money stays in the United States. It's a fairly simple analogy, but it helps you understand that we're not only, buying stuff that's Chinese made, but we're sending more of the money back to them, and instead of it staying in our country. So we have to think about that. And we need to start buying more American-made goods anytime that we can. Reasonably do it. Support American-made businesses. I have a buddy who makes scope mounts. By the way, if you're looking for a rifle scope mount, look up Zero Gravity. Know the guy personally. Actually, he was at the class this weekend. He makes amazing scope mounts and is in business here in the United States. He mills everything. He makes everything himself, literally by himself. And he makes some of the best scope mounts on the market. So if you're shout out to Jake. If you're in the market, check out Zero Gravity scope mounts. They're amazing. Little side note there, but we have to start buying more of the stuff that's made in our country and supporting our countrymen and the businesses they're trying to build and create, and allow our innovation to drive our manufacturing and get out of this globalistic view where we're literally dealing with people that hate us and want to overthrow our country and control it. And a lot of our politicians are allowing that to happen. And that's the end of the tariff talk. Let's get into some other news real quick. This is from Robbie Starbuck. And our old evil mastermind has got some things to talk about. 59-second video. Let's watch this.
What is likely to happen, I don't know if it's going to be next year or 10 years or 15 or 20 years from now, is the emergence of another respiratory disease. It may be another coronavirus, because we know that coronaviruses really, mostly in bats, have the capability of binding to receptors that are in humans. It could be another flu. We're dealing with H5N1 now, which is bird flu, which has taken the somewhat disturbing step of infecting mammals, namely cows and cats and other mammals, which means it's adapting itself more to a human. So my concern, Walter, is that whenever that happens, the next outbreak will be of a respiratory disease that's easily transmissible, that has a significant degree of morbidity.
And we are making this a little bit more dangerous with the cuts and our attitude toward science?
Oh, absolutely. What is likely...
Isn't that amazing to hear this guy, who literally said, I am the science. If you attack me, you're attacking science. Talking about another virus. And Robbie he points out he should know since he helped get the money to the people who designed viruses like this, despite the fact that they were supposed to stop gain of function research. He's probably got some insider information on maybe what's coming down the pike, because he freaking funded the Wuhan Institute of Virology. This is insane. Yeah, feels like Hannibal Lecter warning us about cannibals. In other news, and I'm just going to show this real quick, multiple people, including children, were stabbed slashed with a large knife in Brooklyn this morning before the attacker was shot by an NYPD officer. Anybody that's ever been stabbed, and I know several people that have been stabbed, and they would say, I'll take a bullet before I'll take a knife any day of the week. Also, how are those gun restrictions for concealed carry working out for those New Yorkers? Weird, huh? Almost like if somebody would have had a gun at the scene, maybe this guy wouldn't have been able to stab anybody. The FBI have estimated between 500,000 and 2 million to, actually, I think it may be 3 million if I may be misremembering the facts, but it's minimum 2 million. Between 500,000 and 2 million violent crimes are prevented by guns every single year. Just to drive home the point that we need to exercise our rights, really, regardless of what government officials tell us. This is really interesting from Mr. Guns and Gear. Sam Amin, a YouTuber and Muslim only real estate planner, discusses the tactics he uses to exploit the American system in order to establish his caliphate enclaves in America. For the non-Arabic speaking speakers, a couple of words he used will make what he is saying easier to understand. Masjid is a mosque. Kufr is non-Muslim infidel. And Andalusia is a caliphate Muslims established in the modern day Spain and Portugal. Let's watch this. It's a 3-minute video. This drives home exactly what I've been talking about ad nauseum on the podcast about what's going on with the infiltration. What we're seeing in Europe is coming our way.
279-acre land. So like you said, brother, masjid, homes, a total Muslim village. So we're still debating on the name, but it's going to be something Muslim name and a village attached to it, right? The names of the streets, Khalid ibn al-Walid, Tariq bin Ziyad, like all the great conquerors. Like people need to Google those conquerors and know like what are we made of? Yeah, like Google Khalid bro. Google Tariq bin Ziyad, and then we want to have different sections like Andalusia, this, that, like all our past glories, and we want to bring it back. The way what we're doing, brother, like you cannot make it exclusive, like non-Muslims not allowed, kuffar not allowed. What we're doing, there's something called association fee. I don't know what it's called in Dubai. Like your maintenance fee that you pay yearly, to cutting the service fee, to cut the grass, to remove the snow and whatnot. So that service fee will put there 75% of the service fee you're paying goes to the masjid.
So they would automatically not want to come.
Automatically, if you are a practicing Christian, I would advise you, why help the Muslims, Let Muslims do their own thing, right? So this is the way we're going to put that clause. And our attorney already put it there. So we have, brother, think about it. Like a guy comes from Bangladesh, have no idea about anything. Brother, we're putting an application now where we're selecting the names of the streets in the United States of America. We're putting the subdivision laws. Like, hey, this is the law. One of the laws being your yearly contributions, 75% of it goes to support the masjid that's going to be there. We're making these laws. We're putting those laws. It's unbelievable what Allah can do for you.
Just in my mind. They say if what's called verbal manifestations. If you keep saying something to someone, they'll become like that. If you keep telling someone they're a villain, they'll become a villain. People get saying, "Bro, these Muslims are taking over." The masses, you know what? If you keep calling, if you keep saying it, yes. I'm actually gonna do it.
No, but you know what's mad is what you just said, bro. I think it's mind blowing. You said a guy from Bangladesh comes over to the USA,
Stop naming streets.
Stop naming streets after Islamic
It's unbelievable.
conquerors.
I cannot sometimes even believe it. And I suggested those names, and other
Oh,
people
my
saying,
God.
why these?
Yeah.
Can we have like
Comes over to the USA.
Stop naming streets.
Stop naming streets after Islamic
It's unbelievable.
conquerors.
I cannot sometimes even believe it. And I suggested those names, and other
Oh,
people
my
saying,
God.
why these?
Yeah.
Can we have like
Well,
normal?
I ask Allah, Ya
Cordoba
Allah,
Street.
give success to this project.
I mean,
Ya
I mean.
Allah, protect this project and give it success.
and there's no
Amen.
riba involved.
No riba, brother.
No haram. Like,
So we 6.8 million we raised in 40 minutes.
no, but
Now I'm like, okay, this is happening. This happened, right? And this is another thing. People fear too much, brother. Now you have raised it. Now I have great attorneys. Now we're going to use the kuffar when their telling comes in, right? We have the great attorneys. So I hired everyone that the township knows. So they have dealt with this is their boy, their attorney. This is their civil engineer. This is their planning commissioner. I have hired all of them in our team. Now they are submitting the application because now comes the real world. You got to, play it wise, right? So now the township is going to see an application coming from, I'm not going to name his name, like John Smith submitting this application, but it says Khalid bin Walid Street. Oh my God, what is John Smith thinking, right? But this is what you make John Smith do when you got the money. You hire John Smith and tell him, hey, submit an application as I tell you to submit. Yeah. So
Are you sure this podcast is not going to get you
Oh,
in
no,
trouble?
nothing, brother. I don't care. What are you gonna do? So this is another
But
thing.
I want the project to manifest.
Of course.
that's where you got. Then you got to pull out the constitution.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Freedom of religion.
Exactly,
He's
brother.
saying,
You man identify as whatever you want, bro. I identify as Khalid bin Walid Street.
Yes.
This street identifies
Yeah,
as
as
Khalid bin
Khalid bin
Walid
Walid.
Street.
What are you gonna do now? Hurt the street's feelings? Come on, man. Yeah.
Guys, they're telling us what they're going to do, and they're laughing at us. They have no respect. And what they're talking about is exactly what I've been saying. The pattern throughout all Islamic history is the same when they come into a country. They build safe zones where you cannot come in. And we've already seen one in Michigan. Michigan has one in, I forget exactly where, off the top of my head. They already have one. It's where, no. Sorry. I said the wrong state. It's Minnesota. And it's like Ilhan Omar's area where she is the representative of, complete and total. And we've also seen some in Michigan, some smaller ones. They're talking about building gated communities. They're talking about having the names of the streets be Islamic terrorist names. That's wild stuff, man. And we better wake up. We better wake up. Once they get in, they outbreed. They get involved in political world. And, they've already infiltrated the left. And we're seeing some of that infiltration in the right as well. So we have to, actually be stonewall about this. We can't allow it in. It's broken. And it's it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So we're going to pause for a minute and take a break for a word from one of our sponsors. And we're going to do a quick one from Flex Industries on their AK trigger. Let's watch this.
AK Flex. AK Flex. The crazy part about this thing, it can fit in all platforms. This right here is in a 9mm. We running in the 7.62, 5.45, short, even in the Draco, the long 16-inch. AK Flex, baby.
All right, that is Flex Industries. And if you guys go over there, want to check out their triggers, they make them for AKs, ARs, all kinds of other platforms. Check them out. And if you go over there and you want to purchase some of their stuff, use SD17 to get 17% off your order. And just one of our companies that we deal with, and they make awesome stuff. So check them out, flexindustries.com. So moving on to other news as well. And this first one is kind of insane because this is a German priest talking about Jesus being a sinner. Let's watch this real quick. Get this back up. and let's talk.
Mary sat at the feet of Jesus while Martha did all the work. Finally, Martha spoke up and said, Jesus, why don't you tell her to help me? And Jesus rebukes her and says that Mary's chosen the right thing. People don't like when I point out that Jesus messed up too. But this is a moment that I feel Jesus seriously grieved the Holy Spirit because, of course, hindsight is always 20/20 and you always realize your sin in reflection. He should have told everyone to get up and help. And then everyone would have gotten up and helped. Everyone would have completed the work, and then everyone could have sat down and been present to the teachings. But instead, he rebuked her in front of everyone. That was a very serious mistake, and I will hold him accountable for it. I don't think that this disqualifies him from divinity. He chose to become human because he wanted the human experience that includes sin.
Boy, talk about busted theology. What? Okay. Jesus is a sinner now. And honestly, when you talk about grieving the Holy Spirit, if you know the Bible, that's actually the unforgivable sin. That's the only sin that's mentioned in the Bible directly as an unforgivable sin, is to grieve the Holy Spirit. So she's essentially saying he committed the unforgivable sin and that she's going to hold God accountable. Wow. Just insane. More on the spiritual side. This is a United Methodist minister explains praying to God as our Father can be painful. Let's watch this real quick.
Our Father. Today we shift ever so subtly from our to Father. What does it mean that we address God in this way? What does that tell us about God, about our relationship to God, and our relationship to each other? Whether you pray, our Father in heaven, or our Mother in heaven, or our parent in heaven, it makes no difference in terms of the prayer itself. However, it can make a tremendous difference in the life of the one who is praying. For those with strained or non-existent relationships with the parent, feeling forced to pray to God in a way that brings up that painful familial relationship can have harmful consequences. Where one's parent or caregiver has been unloving or abusive, it can be damaging to pray to God and think of God as parent, especially if doing so projects abusive qualities onto God. So in that situation, I might counsel a person to consider shaping their prayer around a different metaphor. Perhaps our Creator or our Good Shepherd, if these metaphors have positive associations. But it could even be something like our Sunday school teacher, our grandmother, our coach, our mentor, whatever will elicit from you this sense of belovedness.
So, wow. Use the pronoun that you want to address God. I don't understand how that squares with Scripture, but to each their own. Just insanely warped theology, and the United Methodist Church, if you is completely a lost cause. So kind of insane. Yeah. So let's watch this one. Tim Young, really hilarious comedian. Hands off our kids, hands off a woman's rights, says a man pretending to be a woman. Let's watch this real quick. 30-second video.
And we are here today because while we know that Donald Trump thinks that he can place his hands anywhere, we're telling him, hell no, hands off our Social Security, hands off our Medicaid, hands off Medicare, hands off SNAP, hands off our kids, hands off women's rights, hands off LGBTQ rights. And we are here today because while we know.
Well, I'm sure Donald Trump has no interest in touching that man anywhere, and neither do any of us. So this is interesting. Musk did an interview on Fox News about the peace plan in Ukraine. Let's watch this 58-second video, and then we'll talk about this.
We should have empathy for the thousands of people that are dying every day in trenches.
for no movement in the lines. So the borders remain the same. For the past 2 years, thousands of people have died every week for nothing. For what? And I take great offense at those who put the appearance of goodness over the reality of it. Those who virtue signal and say, oh, we can't give in to Russia, but have no solution to stopping thousands of kids dying every day. They just want that to continue forever. I have contempt for such people. I don't want to make that clear, because they're virtue signaling, and their lack of a solution means that kids don't have a father. It means that parents lost a son. For what? Nothing.
I've used the analogy before on this Ukraine war being World War I redo, a World War I redo on a smaller scale, obviously. When you actually read about World War I, trench warfare and stagnant lines, no advance. When they would try to do an advance, millions would die in a couple of days, hundreds of thousands on a daily basis when they would do these offensives, and nothing happened. And it was all a bunch of elitists, the Habsburg dynasties, that sent their young men, an entire generation, into a meat grinder because of some elitist disagreement. It was just a broken and a tragedy. And Ukraine is the same way. The elites want this war, and the young men of Ukraine are paying the price, to the point where they're having to actually kidnap guys off the street and take them to the front lines. It's disgusting, and it needs to end. The toll of war is the absolute, in my opinion, the absolute last resort that you go to when all other attempts at negotiation and diplomacy have exhausted themselves, because it's so costly and it destroys the future of a country. Because when you're killing the next generation, the young generation that most of haven't even had children yet, haven't even married yet, that's awful and disgusting. And to do it for this kind of a thing is just broken. Okay. On a lighter note, this is what every woman should take note this day and age in America. It's sad, but it's true. And this is how we should approach this. So this is Gun Lovers Club, and it just says W. Yep, this is a W. Let's watch.
What you doing, baby? Don't mess with Mama Bear Park.
That's exactly what every woman should do before she leaves the house. You're taking your kids to the park? Pack. Going to the grocery store? Pack. Learn how to use a firearm proficiently and effectively so that you can be the one that stands up against the bad guys when they come to get you. And there are more of those in the country than maybe ever at any time before. So arm up and pack everywhere you go. In other news, 11-second video here. Ever hated someone so much that you made an effigy of them and publicly raped it? This is a woman with a Trump. You can tell what that is. Let's watch this real quick.
She really stand on business. She said, fuck Trump. She really stand on business. She said, fuck Trump.
Insane. Just like the absolute utter loss of human dignity just because of they disagree with Trump. Man, that's sick. In other news, this is really pretty cool. Hockey is about the only sport that I really watch. Huge St. Louis Blues fan. My wife's even bigger St. Louis Blues fan, but I really enjoy. And if you want to go to a sporting event that doesn't get into politics, that is really fun to watch, hockey live is an experience that is incredible. But this is pretty cool. Alex Ovechkin broke Wayne Gretzky, the Great Ones goal record. I think it was night before last. An amazing shot. And Alex has been in the league for a very long time. But look who's here. Kash Patel with two titans of the hockey world. Wade Gretzky, who had the overall goal record, and Alex Ovechkin, the new goal record holder. Really, really awesome. And it's always fun to celebrate some really cool things. In other news, this is what happens when fatherlessness happens on a generational level. Let's watch this little guy with a couple of police officers that are just standing here.
Watch as this toddler with pull-ups tries to bully a cop. It's what he will turn into in the future that's hard to imagine.
That's sad. What's really funny is neither one of those cops are white. If you look really close, one of them is either Mexican or a light-skinned black person, and the other one is clearly black. And these are just police officers. That's insane. And that's what happens with fatherlessness. Young men and little boys need their dads. They need their dads to show them. Honestly, and I'm getting ready to write an article on our Substack that's going and currently working on it, talking about how we should let our sons be absolute savages. We should teach them to know how to unleash that. But then you need a father to teach them how you control it. And you only let it out when it's absolutely necessary. You have to be a dangerous man. That's important. This isn't teaching your kids to be dangerous and control it. This is teaching your kid to buck every level of authority and to be absolutely like a rabid dog when it comes to observing authority. And this is what happens when fathers are not in the home. It's broken. And we've seen that in the black community since the 1960s. In the 1950s, they were the strongest demographic of fathers in the homes, had a very strong family life in spite of all the Jim Crow and everything that was going on at that point. And then LBJ, and I saw somebody in the comments mention LBJ earlier, was an absolute and total. He was in probably the top 5 worst presidents in the United States because he took the black community and he turned it into a welfare state. He put them literally back on the plantation in our major cities through the Great Society and the Welfare Act, and he replaced the father in the home. So now you have young men in these communities being raised in just lawlessness. Okay, in other news, this is from Amuse. Elon Musk reposted this. British mother sentenced to 2 years in jail for an X post. Lucy Connolly took to X to express her anger at learning that Islamic migrants murdered 3 young British girls. Over 1,500 people were arrested for their social media post, and Lucy was just sentenced to 2 years and 7 months for stirring up racial hatred. Not pointing the actual truth out. You know, this was because they were Muslims, and we've seen this. We saw the video earlier. They're moving against Western civilization. And we're going to pay the price for this. And we're already seeing this in England. And this goes along with the narrative that I've done this entire episode. I keep coming back to this. Get armed, get trained, because that's your one stopgap from what's going on in England and what's going on here in the United States. Do you think they wouldn't have rolled over us already if we didn't have guns? And large amounts of guns. And I know the classic liberal argument, Democrat argument is like, you can't fight F-15s with guns. Well, I mean, tell that to the Viet Cong. Tell that to the Taliban. Both of those guys kicked our butts. Made the war so costly that we just said, we're out. I tell you guys, we need to start educating people more and more about what's going on. So next, we just got a couple more slides and we're going to get into the fun stuff. This is an interesting video Elon Musk posted, and I've got a couple of these examples. The problem is the puppet masters, not the puppets, as the latter have no idea why they're even there. So let's watch this 2 minute and 30 second. Probably won't watch the whole thing. It doesn't take long for you to figure this out.
So what makes Trump a fascist? What makes Trump a fascist?
He does things without
Yeah, talk loud. I don't have my mic on.
I'm not really good into interviews.
Sorry?
He just does everything he wants, and not following laws, or he's a convicted felon. That's all I know.
But your sign says he's a fascist, and I'm just curious what makes him a fascist.
One of the things is that he's trying to control the media, right?
Say that again?
He's trying to control the narrative.
How is he trying to control the media? Doesn't every president try to control the narrative?
They try to control their own narrative, but one of the things that Trump has done, for example, is the renaming the Gulf of Mexico, and then not allowing the Associated Press to come into the White House. Basically, trying to get.
What are your feelings about him renaming the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America when a majority of the Gulf is in fact on the coast of America as opposed to Mexico?
I mean, it's kind of pointless. People.
Is it pointless?
Yeah, people call it the Gulf of Mexico.
Don't you think it could have a positive tourism impact potentially?
Tourism has been down heavily.
So I don't want to get.
So I'll stop it there. We'll move on to another one here. And these protesters, but these are the people that they're putting out. These are the people that they're putting out in these protests. They're paying these people. We have proof of this. Like they're being paid, and there's a narrative that they're trying to push.
Democracy right now and trying to kind of repeal a bunch of shit in the Constitution, like rights and liberties. So,
is there anything in specific that
I don't have all the information, but I do know.
What are you against?
Personally, I'm against tyrants. I'm against tyranny. That's what I'm against.
What is that?
Somebody who's coming in and trying to take over the country and get rid of the rules and regulations that have existed for centuries to keep us citizens safe.
And who do you think is doing that?
Currently, Donald Trump and Elon Musk and all of his cabinet members.
Why Elon Musk, though?
The Department of Government Efficiency, he was put in charge of a department that doesn't even exist before this, and he's not even an American.
Who's not an American?
Elon Musk.
Okay,
He's from South Africa. I don't know if you knew that.
How do you feel about Donald Trump?
I think that he deserves to die.
He should what?
Die.
Okay. Right.
That's how I feel.
So who do you want to run America?
The people, preferably.
You want the people to run America?
Like a democracy should be. Yes.
Do you feel like the people voted for him?
I think the people were fooled.
Fooled by who?
Him.
How?
I don't.
I'll stop it there. Oh, it's rather hilarious to watch these people try and articulate a point, articulate their reason for being out there, because they really have no idea what they're talking about. So, yeah. So, anyways, last on chapter 2, and then we're going to move right into chapter 3 from Sean Ryan, and this is very true. Ephesians 6:12. For we are not fighting against people made of flesh and blood, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against those mighty powers of darkness who rule this world, and against wicked spirits in heavenly realms. And you could get into a whole diatribe about that, but those things are what's influencing a lot of this evil and tyranny that's going on. Very, very matter of factly. Let's move on into chapter 3. If you give me just 1 second, I've got to open up a few of these slides, but we're going to have some fun with a few things and some satire and sarcasm that I know all of us absolutely love. And then we'll be calling it a night. But stick around because we're going to have some fun to close out this episode. Appreciate you guys sticking around and being a part of the Survival Dispatch family. I really, really love doing this with you guys. And even though it's an odd night that I normally don't do, I'm very excited to do it. And I always love coming on here to talk to you guys. Unfortunately, didn't have anybody on the panel tonight, so it's just me doing a lot of talking. So give me just 1 second. And we'll start off with this meme. The ATF is like a box of chocolates. They'll kill your dog. You guys don't know what that means. Like, look up Waco, look up Ruby Ridge. Yeah, they have a long history of killing dogs. So, Pam Bondi and Kash Patel reported. Actually, this is supposed to be in chapter 2. I apologize for that. I'll read it anyways. Pam Bondi and Kash Patel reportedly claimed that the DOJ and ATF will repeal and revisit the Biden-era Second Amendment rules, including zero tolerance policy, pistol brace, and engaged in the business relations. That is huge for FFLs. So amazing. Here we go. More on the ATF. They should all be fired. F the ATF. No one has ever been fired. Waco, Ruby Ridge, and the people showing up at your front door to check your guns, which they can't do. Here we go. Good morning. While the market melts down, remember to take some time to relax.
Capibara, 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 capibara.
That's pretty good. I have to say AI is getting better and better at generating these videos. Here we go. Me watching the stock market go down. Me watching the stock market go back up. And it was going up right before I started the show here. So check it here in a minute. Here we go. Tim Pool, I voted for this. Let's watch this.
Labeled as whiny, retarded, sad little bitches.
Hold it. This is a good one. Is everybody listening?
This.
There you go. Trump has really impeccable comedic timing. Let's watch this. This was the LA Dodgers start to crack up when Trump declines to introduce the senators. Let's watch.
Congratulations, Brian. And others. We have a couple of senators here. I just don't particularly like them, so I won't introduce. Over the course of this amazing season, the members of this team. I didn't think it was that big a deal, actually. Washington. Over the course of this amazing season, the members of this team gave us some of the most congratulations.
Just Trump. And I don't know. Chris may have played this one in the past couple of days. This thing went viral. Let's watch this real quick. This is incredible. I've got to mimic this on the range sometime. Absolutely have to mimic this. That's pretty awesome. And everybody knows that. And I know like 90% of you guys play the air drums when that part plays on that song. Just a classic. There you go. Just a lady in heeled boots taking care of business. Honestly, that's pretty impressive. As a firearms instructor, pretty good recoil management. Here is why men will obviously live shorter lives than women, because we just like to mess around with things.
Everybody wanted me to shoot this new Desert Eagle 50 caliber shotgun pistol from Magnum Research that just came out. So we got at that watermelon and drop the slide so you guys can see what happens. Ready? Still smoking.
That's awesome. Give me just a second here. More fun on the range. You know me and the gun stuff. I can't get enough of it. So here we go. New suppressor for a Glock 47 and Glock 47. What is the Glock 22? I can't think of it off the top of my head. But let's check this out, because I agree with Defiant L's. I need one of these because it's just so much fun.
Suppressed Glock 44 full auto. Oh my God. Glock 44.
Let's watch that again.
Full auto. Oh my God. Dude.
Yep, that's on my bucket list. That is on my bucket list. Here we go. Here's proof that Trump's tariffs work. Anyone else want to say otherwise is 100% wrong. Let's watch this.
Noah! Larry, what the hell are you doing? Larry! Larry, you can't just... Oh,
Larry! Oh, are you all right? How did...
Larry! Noah!
Just slapping people around. Here we go. This is one that husbands and wives will both understand, but it is an unwritten rule. And my wife will tell you, yes, unwritten rule. Solid. All the husbands know exactly what I'm talking about. You can't walk by your wife in the kitchen without, having that urge. Here we go. Americans watching Europeans get arrested for social media posts. Laugh in 600 million firearms. Yep. And here we go. China calls President Trump's tariffs bullying. Yes, Paris. Trump is burying me. I'm pretty good at putting R's into the words. I tend to spend a lot of time around people that from that part of the world that can't speak clear English. Here we go. Driving the point home. Free men do not ask permission to exercise their rights. If we're free men, we don't worry about that. And in other news, Drew Barrymore comes out. What are your thoughts? I personally don't care, but apparently that happened. just another one looking, just another past their prime actor that needs some attention. So they either come out or do something else outlandish, like changing genders or something. Here we go. This one's kind of crazy. Nose waxing gone wrong.
1, 2, 3. You gotta go back.
My hands are sweating! Get it out of my face!
1, 2, 3. Mikey,
I'm
no,
fine!
hey.
Mikey, I'm fine!
Mikey, come here.
Mikey, come here, baby! My kneecaps are shaking!
It's funny, bro. Come here.
I'm fine now because I have a free nose so I can breathe. I don't like when my kneecaps are shaking. I think I gotta
Mikey,
sit down.
come here, bro. I still gotta be live. Whoa. Sam, I guess we better record this.
That's wow, that's pretty crazy. Oh, anyways, and another one. Does this make you guys feel uncomfortable? Women out the store, just a couple AR-15s hanging from them. I say more of this. Now, I don't actually propose that everybody strap on AR-15s, because I think that in some ways makes you more of a target, unless everybody's wearing them. But I will say this: an armed society is a polite society. 100% true. Here we go. We owe Joseph McCarthy an apology. America was and is infiltrated by communists. He was right all along. If you guys agree with that statement, put a 1 in the chat. If you don't, put a 2. And only AK-47 owners would understand this. Is this the proper way to wash off an AK? You know, just crazy levels there of resilience on the AK-47. So and that is it for our show tonight. We are excited that you guys came along and joined us with this very important topic of the Supreme Court and the courts and everything going on with the tariffs. It's important that we stay up to date on this. So homework, I would say you guys need to be involved in your local politics. As we always say, it seems like the marching orders are always very similar, but you guys get involved locally, regionally, state level, and nationally in understanding what is going on and being able to articulate these points to other people. Don't be afraid of debating people. Don't be afraid of standing up for what you believe, and don't be afraid of actually taking part in the political process. It's very important that we do that, because if we don't stand up for our rights, politicians will not stand up for us. Politicians are your worst enemy, because they are only interested in political things and how they can get reelected. So if the other side's a lot louder than us, they're going to get a lot more they're going to get a lot more attention, and they may sway some of the politicians to think that we don't exist. No more silent majority. Nothing. Speak out, stand up, buy guns, buy lots of guns, buy all the guns and all the ammo. More important than even buying guns, though, is getting proper training. I, as a firearms instructor and somebody that has been shooting for decades, I still find reputable instructors to go and spend a weekend with, spend a week with, train and train and train. if you think that you've learned everything there is about shooting and firearms and surveillance and all of these things that are survival skills, you're woefully mistaken. Get out, get training, reputable instructors. Going to shout our stuff out. You guys want good training? Righteous Savages, check it out, righteoussavages.com. Have a lot of trainings over the summer, and we're adding more and more and more, and we're developing new curriculum all of the time. Going to be putting in some long-range carbine classes coming up soon, and so if you're in the Midwest, close to the southern tip of Illinois, don't be afraid to come out and train with us. Yeah, Sarah. Yeah, I know that you can only well, technically you can fire 2, but you know, hey brother, yep, I'm all about that training, but you know, have multiple platforms that you understand and are intimately aware of. Not just handgun, rifle, long range rifle, close quarters, all of that stuff is important. And learn from the best. Learn from people that have done it for a long time. And spend your money on ammunition and training more than you do guns, but owning a lot of guns. If you haven't ever bought a gun, buy one. Then get training. That is the most important thing. Master the skill and master the different disciplines. And also, you know, if you're a person of faith, turn to God, deepen your relationship with God. It's so important, and it's so enlightening to get deeper into that. As I get deeper with my relationship with God, the world, as much as it doesn't make sense, it still makes sense that we're in a fallen world and we're broken, and there's no amount of human interaction that can actually change that. Human beings will always become debased without our faith. So, and not a false faith, a real faith. So turn to that. Other than that, make sure you guys are jumping on that Patreon, $9.99 a month, Insider Daily Sit Rep. Access to exclusive behind-the-scenes content, access to the private chat on Signal, 228-page Essentials Guide for Survival, 50% off the Insider eMags, and early access to content. So jump on that, and also just to show support with us. Also, the Substack. We have a Substack for Survival Dispatch, and that is growing as well. And we put a lot of other content on that as well, articles and such. So also give a real quick shout out to us. We also have a Righteous Savages Substack, where we put, I write a lot of articles. It's something I've always loved writing, and I get a chance to kind of flex those muscles a little bit out there. So check out our Substack, Righteous Savages on Substack. It's a very cool platform, and there's a lot of very like-minded people on there. So I encourage you guys to jump over there as well. It's free to sign up, and you can show your support by doing so. As I usually do, because I am very deep in my faith, I am going to pray us out, and then we're going to do the outro video. But thank you guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe our content on whatever platform you are on. And we'll see you guys again tomorrow with another episode. I'm going to pray us out, and then we'll watch the outro video. Heavenly Father, once again, I come to you, and I'm thankful so much for the opportunity to speak out against tyranny, because I know that you are opposed to tyranny, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak to these like-minded people and hopefully be able to change hearts and minds for your kingdom. Lord, I pray that you help us, help our country as we go through this period of change and hopefully a positive revolution. And I pray that you just guide the people who are in charge, the people making the decisions, that you turn evil away, and that you expose the evil and you highlight the good, and that peoples will see the work that you are doing in our country and will turn to you because of it. Lord, I'm thankful that you have brought all of us here tonight safely, and I pray that you keep us safe as we go about our daily lives tomorrow. I'm thankful in Jesus' name. Amen. We'll see you guys tomorrow, and I'm actually going to be hosting tomorrow as well. So I'll see you then. We have a special guest tomorrow that you're going to love. So you guys have a good night, and God bless America.